The story begins in a village around the mountains. At this, the screams of two people were heard throughout the village. One brother shouted at the other, as the teacher and other elders had gone to the heavenly island, and at the Tiangang Conference, they need to show all the best abilities of their clan to keep it in the rankings next month. The younger brother was not the least bit worried. For even if the teacher and elders returned, it was unlikely that they would retain the ranking of their clan. For over a decade, they had seen many schools and currents flourish, but their people had a very fragmented existence. Decline was only a matter of time. His older brother couldn't understand what he was talking about. He reminded him that the Yunxian clan used to be an outstanding first-class clan, only to be haunted by an evil fate. His younger brother began to calm him down and pointed his finger somewhere in the forest. The older brother realized that he wanted to invite the same person, so he didn't like the idea, but they didn't have any other ideas. At this time, this man was feeding a bull somewhere in the woods. He also met his cat Cutie on the way back. He tried to interact with her in some way, but she didn't want to do anything but just lay there. Then he realized that this poor thing was completely untrainable, and if she didn't come to her senses within a few days, he would have to have her spayed. And that sure as hell wasn't like a mosquito bite. After which, he went to the inside of the cave to his teacher. When he came closer to the teacher asked him why he had left Dakyang to graze on the slope again, while he had gone to the foot of the mountain to have fun. The student immediately began to justify himself, saying that he had been with Chiang's brother the whole time, and swore that if he lied, he would be struck by lightning at this very spot. And in his head, he didn't understand how the man had guessed, and began to wonder if his teacher was a seer. The teacher got angry, and aimed a bolt of lightning from his hand in his direction. The student immediately started yelling at him and retaliating for what he was doing. The teacher explained that he had to do justice because he was to be struck by lightning for his lying. The disciple was shocked by the teacher, and asked him not to bother with the punishing thunder. Thus, he only made huge holes everywhere in the Tianyang cave. The teacher started to get angry at him and muttered that he did not respect his elders at all. The student immediately ran up to him and apologized and promised to make amends, because he had taken him 19 years ago and he did not want to let him down. Just as suddenly, they heard that Wu Xiaoqi's younger brother Wu Xiaoqi and Wu Quaner's older brother had come and asked permission to come inside to them. It got interesting to them, and they would let them in. After that, the two brothers went to the teacher and fell on their knees. They also told him that the Tiangang Conference would raise the issue of their clan's survival. With only a few of their clan's elder brothers still in the ranks, they could rely on their luck to regain their first position again. But without the clan head's seal, they cannot participate in the Tiangang Conference and will be immediately expelled. The last days within the clan do not stop discussing. Everyone realizes that among them there is no suitable candidate for the role of clan head, so they take the courage to ask them. They understood that the teacher had been living in seclusion for many years, not interested in what was happening in the world. But they were really in a desperate situation, not expecting it at all. They also swore that it was only for a while. As soon as the Tiangang Conference was over, they would not bother the great righteous man and interfere with their practices. When he heard all this, he showed them his disciple, and told them to send this boy in his place. When they looked at him, they were not very sure. Although this young man was a direct disciple of the great righteous man, but he looked 18 to 19 years old. Meanwhile, he himself was standing in a stupor, and didn't understand where this crazy old man wanted to send him again. The old man also said that he had once taken a blood oath, and now he can't go down this mountain. But this guy is their ancestor. Despite his age, he is quite trustworthy. The older brother was about to say that he was probably not suitable for such a case. The old man understood what he was getting at, and without letting him finish, he asked if they really didn't like the candidate recommended by the elder. But the apprentice added that he had made a hasty decision and asked him to think it over again, because he didn't want to get involved in such a mess. The old man activated the lightning bolt on his arm and asked him to repeat again what he had said there. He decided to change the subject and abruptly remembered that he had forgotten to feed Brother Ju. But the younger brother, when he saw the sage's strength, immediately agreed to his recommendation. The old man decided to teach him one last lesson, so he shot a bolt of lightning at him. The apprentice managed to bounce away, after which he realized that he would definitely not be able to get away without any worries now. So after an hour, he was already sitting on the throne. The younger brother immediately began to introduce him to everyone. He said that he was their new head and the only direct disciple of the great righteous Yu King. Therefore, everyone could now address Sky as the head or ancestor. But the crowd wasn't happy, because now their clan was ruled by a snot-nosed sucker. Everyone wanted to see the great righteous man, because with him they would definitely leave the first place, not to mention the 3 leaders. Everyone wondered why he hadn't come down from the mountain. The elder brother decided to interrupt the discontented shouts, and asked if they really doubted the judgment of the great righteous man. The entire crowd fell silent, and after looking at each other with their eyes, they all realized that they couldn't find a better option besides him. After which, the entire crowd paid their respects to him. When the crowd left, his older and younger brother decided to remind him that colleagues from other clans would be arriving before the Tiangang Conference to share their experiences. Therefore, he will only need to take charge for that time. His younger brother saw him start to worry and advised him that he should not talk and pretend to be a master, and everything would go fine. The student decided to relax a bit and went into the woods. There, he decided to talk to make himself feel better and feed Brother Chang. He was also very bored. More than half a month had passed since he had left the Tianyang cave, and apart from the daily identification of the clan followers. On top of the constant visits, with congratulations from ambassadors of other clans, nothing seemed to change. And at the same time, everything changed at once. Though he wasn't eager to return, he still had to. As soon as he got there, he should have immediately met Liu Jushi from the Lingxiao clan. But the only problem was that his ancestor couldn't remember him. So he asked his older brother to make a list of people for him in his spare time. Although Quaner had agreed to repeat people's names to him again, but in his mind, he was not satisfied that this rascal still couldn't memorize a single clan. After which Quaner began to tell who the Lingxiao clan is ranked first in the Earth rank. They say that this year, they may very well enter the Heavenly rank. They are strong in magic and spells. The clan originated from the Liu family. So all the people who passed the certification and joined the clan take the Liu surname. Today, his visitor Liu Jushi is the favorite disciple of clan head Liu Kalan. His younger sister Liu Yipai is a young girl who is personally trained by the master, will clearly take the place of the clan head in the future. After the ancestor was aware of the whole situation, he allowed him to be let into his place. Quaner was most worried because if today went smoothly and safely, and no one found out, their clan would be able to rehabilitate themselves in front of the Tiangang Conference. After which, Liu Rushi walked inside and introduced himself, and also decided to congratulate him on his appointment as the new head of the Yungxian clan. He also decided to give a gift from the Lingxiao clan as a token of their gratitude. Liu Jushi himself had heard that the new head of the Yungxian clan was a personal disciple of the great righteous man Yu King, capable of taking the place of the clan head at a young age, and he must have some ability. However, the Yungxian clan is now at the very end of the Earth rank, and the great righteous man Yu King has no longer made his way out of his cave. Besides, no one has responded in any way, and he assumes that nothing special will happen at the Tiangang Conference. But when Liu Rushi looked at him, he looked completely different from what he had imagined. Compared to the gaze of the other young men, it is obvious that his gaze is much deeper, as if he has more than a dozen years on him, as if he is an elder. Meanwhile, the ancestor didn't understand why this Liu Jushi was staring at him all the time, and thought he had already guessed something, that he was only pretending to be a master. To the ancestor's surprise, Liu Rushi asked to deviate, since he had already accomplished his mission. As soon as he came out, the ancestor and Quaner immediately exhaled. Quaner even started to get a headache as soon as Liu Rushi walked in there. The ancestor walked to his back, and touching his shoulders, activated the healing fire on his hands, without Quaner even realizing anything. After that, he decided to go to the backyard to see the Daqiang and Zhu brothers, as they must be hungry by now. When he left, Quaner began to think about why his headache suddenly stopped abruptly. Meanwhile, after leaving the Yungxian clan, Liu Rushi arrived at the guild hall of the Taiyi Palace of the Lingxiao clan. This place was the Fengtian city, created specifically for the meeting of all the clans. Liu Yipai's sister Liu Yipai immediately met him there, and began to ask him how his meeting with the great righteous man Yu King had gone. Liu Jushi began to say that today he had only seen the newly elected head of the clan, the great righteous man Yu King, who was probably continuing his hermitage. A man came into their conversation and added that several senior clan followers had secluded themselves together with the great righteous man. At this point, 19 years had passed, and still no one had come down from there as agreed. Then the boy joined the conversation and told the rumor that the head was several years older than him. Though he was a disciple of the great righteous man, he had received the true title of Great Righteous Man. But from the mastery of that clan, where no one had perfected his abilities for tens and hundreds of years. Liu Rushi also remembered that he had used magic today, When he entered, this magic could only be sensed and weakened by practitioners who had reached contrived heights. But the second elder and clan head surprisingly managed it. He also doesn't understand if they didn't notice it or if they deliberately didn't show that they knew. Besides, the new head smiled at him from start to finish without uttering a word. An inscrutable and mysterious man indeed. Liu Yipai, on the other hand, thought that the choice of the clan head was not child's play. Supporting the disciple of a great righteous man. Do so for reasonable reasons. Although the changes in the Yongxian clan don't affect the big picture much, they should be careful to avoid other major upheavals. In any case, the Lingqiao clan and the Tiangang Conference must retain the first place of Earth rank. Only by maintaining the first place of the Earth rank could they reach the heavenly rank, which was what the teacher had always hoped for. Meanwhile, the ancestor himself was trying to make himself a meal in the kitchen. Xiaoqi also praised his ancestor, for he didn't even expect that he could cook so deliciously, even better than the chef from that tavern. Then an ancestor told the story that when he lived in the mountains he cooked. At first he was dissatisfied that his cooking was too plain, and then he went down to the foothills to learn some crafts. And also the ancestor asked Xiaoqi to elaborate on the Earth and Sky clans, because anyone who decides to tell Quaner about them can't tell them properly. Xiaoqi began by saying that clans are made into 3 levels: heavenly, earthly, and unfathomable. 100 years ago, perfection was uncommon. But suddenly, at one point, everyone started improving like hell for some reason. Since then, in addition to a few founding clans, many new ones have appeared. As the clans grew like bamboo shoots after rain, the first-class problems also arose, and many clans began to do dirty deeds in secret under the slogans of improvement. After a long time, the imperial court realized that if left unattended, disaster would sooner or later happen. Therefore, only 3 levels of clans were allowed throughout the world: earthly, heavenly, and unfathomable. And it was only possible to keep clans without a level for 10 years. The Tiangang Conference is the place to choose the Earth rank clan. The 3 Earth rank clans will compete for the heavenly rank, and if they win, they can get a lot of resources. The followers of Xuanzi were actually the Imperial Court clan and were responsible for governing all the other clans. Be that as it may, many forests of spirit animals and stocks of miracle medicines are controlled by the Xuanzi clan, and their third-rate clans are only licking the leftovers off other people's plates. The ancestor realized that according to what Xiaoqi had said, if their Yongxian clan were to leave the Earth rank, they would only have 10 years to live. If they didn't enter the Earth rank again after 10 years, they would have to dissolve the clan. Xiaoqi confirmed his words, and added that losing the Earth rank meant losing the support of the court and his trust as well. He hadn't heard of any clans that had lost their Earth rank and returned. Then the ancestor thought for a moment, for in the past half a month, he had seen that most of the disciples of their Yongxian clan had only improved to the level of Earth demons, which was only the most basic skills. In the morning, they received a visit from Liu Rushi. All of them are celestial demons, and this kind of comparison is already a definite defeat. Xiaoqi decided to relax him, and at least now they had a head and would be able to compete. On top of that, their Yongqian clan is always favored by fortune. They retain the last place on the list every time. For Ancestor, it was all serious because if their Yongxian clan disappeared, he would have no home. But Xiaoqi only laughed and suggested opening a restaurant at that time. For the ancestor, this was not an option after all. His teacher is already old, all day long in the Tianyang cave. He can't let him become a cook. He also thought that he could refuse to participate, but Xiaoqi upset him and reminded him that the Tiangang Conference was a test for the younger generation of disciples, and since he was the clan head, he should participate anyway. Predok sighed frustratedly as he realized he couldn't get away from these problems. But suddenly he remembered, once he was practicing and having fun, and after eating a few, he would feel in very good shape that time. So he asked if he could take his medication before the game. Xiaoqi realized that he was most likely talking about an elixir, and no matter how strange it was, it didn't break any laws. In addition, he threw in the phrase that the panacea was in honor of perfection. Therefore, without wasting any precious hour, he went to the Yongxian clan's alchemy room, which was originally the place where Chief Elder Wu Sanyu was in charge. Now that Chief Elder Wu Sanyu had disappeared along with the others, the place had been deserted for some time. Now his new assistant, Qi, brought him all the medicinal herbs he needed. She also asked what kind of lectionary exactly he was making. After all, she saw in the list of herbs there was a blue snake flower, which indicated the creation of poison. The ancestor himself did not understand how the blue snake flower could be poisonous. For last time he had made a small ball of it, eaten it, and there had been no reaction. Chiki's assistant got very shocked as she taught that his petals are indeed poisonous. The ancestor was surprised at her words, for his teacher had told him that it was a trifle for health. But then he thought about it and remembered that when he ate too much, he had diarrhea. But then he thought his body was just weak. Then the assistant explained to him that only one blue flower could poison 10 spirit beasts. And then she thought that he had probably mistaken it for a blue honeysuckle flower. Here it is already strengthening the spirit and nourishing the face. Predoc was shocked and asked her again if she was sure. Though her teacher disappeared shortly after she began practicing, she remembers well the classification and healing properties of the various herbs, and he certainly can't be wrong. Then the ancestor wondered if it was true that if several dozen medicinal herbs were mixed together, some kind of reaction would occur, and the medicinal properties of the herbs would intercombine with each other and counteract the highly toxic substances. Out of all this, a strengthening remedy should emerge. So he began to act on his luck and decided to roast the herbs on the fire first, and then he would see what would come out of it. Then he asked Chiki to call him after the 3 incense racks had burned, and he would take a nap. When the ancestor left, Chiki wondered if he could be trusted at all. After a while, the 3 sticks burned through, and then Chiki went to wake up the ancestor. On the way back, she asked him why he was so tired. Then the ancestor complained that he had been feeling a little sleepy lately, probably because he had to receive guests every day and stay in his seat all day. When the ancestor took the medicine straight out of the furnace, Tsitsi was shocked that he went in there with his bare hand. When he tried the first pill, it tasted exactly the same as before, so he remembered the recipe exactly right. After that, he offered her to try the medicine as well, but she started to refuse as she did not trust his prescription at all. As he suddenly noticed Quaner passing by, he called out to him. When Quaner picked up this pill, he thought it was some kind of crap. The precog started to calm him down, and although it doesn't look very appealing, it tastes very good. He decided to take the pill in his hand and make a nice little thing out of it, and also explained that stinky tofu smells disgusting when you eat it. It's incredibly delicious. He then provided him with a very smooth and seemingly normal tablet. While Quaner was thinking to eat or refuse, Xiaoqi came over and snatched this pill right into his mouth. Xiaoqi liked the taste of this thing, except he couldn't understand why it was a bit like stinky tofu. Quaner started yelling at him and saying that he had just eaten the ancestor's panacea. So Quaner started climbing down his throat to spit out this pill, because he doesn't know if it's poisonous or not. Xiaoqi was not at all pleased and began to resent him for not taking his medicine right away and crammed it down his throat so much that it almost twisted him. And as soon as Xiaoqi stood up, his stomach began to ache sharply. Quaner was furious that he was eating everything in sight, but still decided to help him clear his stomach. Xiaoqi didn't wait for help, but very abruptly and quickly ran to the restroom as he was ready to do the deed right there. After that, the ancestor approached Quaner, and he asked him to tell him more about the Tiangang Conference. But Quaner did not want to tell him as he was not in the mood, so he advised him to ask someone else. As a friend heard some very strange noises coming from the direction of the bathroom, Ancestor and Quaner immediately ran over there to find out what had happened. A very satisfied and relaxed Xiaoqi came out of the toilet stall. He ran up to his ancestor and started thanking him for such a cool pill. Just then, a blessing descended on his entire body, and all his insides were cleansed. He also realized that if it wasn't for this pill, he wouldn't have been able to get rid of the evil spirit sitting inside him. If all of the clan's followers could be honored to take the same pill, it would mean an unprecedented breakthrough. He believed that this was a second chance for the clan. He also asked if he had any more of those pills. When the ancestor asked exactly how many of these pills were needed, Xiaoqi told him to make as many as possible, and he would already distribute to the clan followers. The next day, everyone was going to get some kind of gift from the master. After which, Quaner came out and started handing out ancestor pills to everyone. When Chiki took the pill, there was only one question: what's wrong with this thing? She began to reassure herself that if the ancestor ate yesterday and didn't die, it must be okay. Quaner saw her eating the pill, so he approached her and advised her to go to the toilet. She of course didn't understand why it was even necessary. He ordered her louder and asked her not to ask too many questions. She gave him a strange look and agreed to go. All of a sudden, within a minute, everyone who tried this pill got a stomach ache. Everyone immediately rushed to the restroom. There was a very large line as almost everyone who came was raring to go. Within minutes, all the toilets were trashed and feces were spread all over the area, with a very large and stinky odor. The 15th year of the Lin dynasty is historically known as the 15th Massacre. but no one in the world knows about this tragedy. One fine evening, the mentor did send his ancestor a letter and told him to come to Tiangang Cave, and even insisted on a disguise. But he wondered how many people in general in the city would recognize him, a mere man. This letter was of course brought by his cute little cat. When the ancestor went to see the teacher, he left his kitty in charge. Only then did he realize that he had said something stupid, because what could a little kitten do? Even if something happened, he wouldn't care. After that, he jumped through the window and went to the teacher. The Predok heard this and scattered. He was not happy with such guards guarding the imperial palace. It's just a passable courtyard with such guards. While walking through the forest, he saw another man who also does not want his identity revealed. He was so bored that he ran after the man. The man even had a feeling as if someone was watching him right now. The ancestor also noticed that this person was somewhat wary, more like he wanted to do something bad. He was also clearly moving towards the Tiangang Cave. Predok thought that he was familiar with his mentor. Just as suddenly smoke appeared in front of the girl, and Yan Tasue emerged from there. The ancestor was watching all this from the tree, and didn't understand why Yan Tasu came out after all. He must be hiding somewhere around the Green Lake. This is a very powerful being. He doesn't even know if this stranger can deal with him. She didn't want to use magic against spirits, for it was a waste of energy. So she shouted to the spirit, "I am here to find one person. I do not wish to harm you, but if you insist on doing so, but I have no choice." When the ancestor heard the woman's voice, he was surprised. He began to wonder if he should help her, for they did not even know each other, and he had no reason to help her. Although on the other hand, she's a girl, and it seems like she wouldn't be able to deal with Yan Tasu on her own. For a young hero like him to be left behind in such a situation, it's not acceptable at all, is it? When the spirit struck the woman, she flew off to one side and her sword to the other side. The ancestor decided to help after all and jumped down from the tree. Meanwhile, the girl didn't know what to do. She had never imagined that she would die like this, whereupon the spirit leapt at her with claws. But the moment he jumped, she disappeared, as if she had become invisible. She was actually grabbed by an ancestor who decided to pick her up and carry her to safety. She even blushed a little and thanked him for saving her. And also, like a gentleman, he asked if she was hurt. When he looked closely, he saw the wounds on her leg. Predok asked her to wait a moment, and he would be back. Before leaving, she warned that Yan Tasu's power was comparable to cultivators who had crossed the fifth heavenly boundary, and also advised her to get out of here, for they didn't even know each other and didn't owe each other. The ancestor tensed up a bit, for he had never heard of the fifth heavenly boundary before. He didn't even know what level it was. As soon as he approached the spirit immediately jumped on him as well. The ancestor stood calmly still and only asked, "You're supposed to be at the Green Lake. Why did you come here?" The spirit sat down abruptly and meekly in front of the ancestor, whereupon he offered to take him away, or to get out of here himself. Before leaving, the spirit walked up to the ancestor and hugged him, its drool dripping right on him. Then like a cute kitten, he went back to his room. This girl lay beside her and did not understand what kind of holy person this was, for Yan Tashe had suddenly become affectionate. And even more, she didn't understand how to ask for the Lingxiao clan to enter the Heaven's Gate now. Whereupon the ancestor went over to her and took her foot to examine it. The girl quickly took her foot and blushed and called him a libertine. She couldn't believe it was just a youngster who had been up to such lewd deeds from the start. Predok didn't know what she was talking about, and she told him to stop playing dumb. He took her leg again and decided to get a closer look at what had happened there after all. Even though he had things to do, he couldn't just leave it like this. His conscience didn't allow him to leave here in this state. If Yan Tasu came here from the Green Lake, allowed to be, there are still spirits hanging around. After which he activated healing magic on her leg. She was red all the time. Though he really didn't understand anything, she was very tense. The ancestor decided to stop the bleeding, but he would not be able to completely heal the wound. When the girl asked who he even was, he said he was just a pawn whose name didn't deserve to be mentioned. Then she asked why this beast Yan Tasue treated him with such reverence. He told the story that even from his childhood, he had fights with him and his kin, so now he was afraid of him. Next, the ancestor bandaged the wound and the bleeding stopped. Now she had to hurry to town and find a healer as soon as possible. Except there was a problem for her. She hadn't yet completed the task the master had given her. Unexpectedly, he took her in his arms again, as he couldn't just go and leave her here. Just as he was about to leave, Yan Tasu jumped out of the bushes. Yan Tasu walked up to them and pulled not his front paws. Yan Tasu was agreeable to taking this girl to the gates of the city. Before departing, she did ask his name one more time. The ancestor saw no point in lying to her and said his name was Li Yun. After which, she too said her name Li Yibai of the Lingxiao clan, and also asked when they would meet again. The one went off into the woods, and in the aftermath mouthed, "If it is so fated we shall meet." After a while he approached the teacher's cave. Then there, for some reason everything was trashed before the entrance. When he approached his mentor, he immediately asked about the mess. The mentor only told him to come closer, as he wanted to see if his boy had gotten stronger in the meantime. Li Yun noticed that the mentor was particularly amorous today, and thought that some devious plan along the lines of he would walk up and the teacher would attack him. Mentor was a little angry, for he really just wanted to make sure he was eating well, for he hadn't seen him in a long time. When Li Yun came closer, he asked him not to be angry, for he had to become more and more calm as the years passed. The teacher also remarked that it had only been half a month since they had seen each other, but his tongue was so sharp. He also hit him and called him a stupid student, because he didn't even bring candy to his mentor. Li Yun was indignant because he always came back to him with a gift. He brought him Wang Ji's cookies, for which he had stood in line all day, after which he pulled out a gob of cookies from his cloak. After that, with a happy mood, the mentor began to ask him what he had seen during these 2 weeks. Li Yun began to complain that he was sad every day, but he still followed the instructions, even though he still couldn't remember the names of many clans. And also, Li Yun asked why he is so popular, because many people asked about him. But he is not stupid, so he just told everyone that he is fine. He just needs to recover a little. And he also reported that all his hard work to rebuild the Yunshin clan had come to nothing, for he had given everyone pills, and they had destroyed the toilet afterwards. His mentor gave him the idea that the pills were simply too powerful for them. Li Yun added that the books he gave him were clear and concise. He was inclined to think that if other people could see their contents, they too could cultivate. Starkey told him the story that alchemists in this world are divided into 9 ranks using the same ingredients, so it is almost impossible to achieve such different results. The old man always told him to read more, and not knowing the answer to such a simple question was a nonchalant thing to do, which made the Strick even more angry with him. Li Yun decided to relax him, and told him that memorizing a couple of recipes was his ceiling since he didn't like reading books at all. Alchemists are in the business of creating pills, which is also categorized into 9 ranks, ranging from strengthening agents to miracle pills. However, alchemists of the 8th and 9th ranks had not been seen for a long time. There are only legends about them. Currently, the most outstanding alchemist is Feng Qingbai of the Zhuangzi clan, who is a 7th rank alchemist, but his abilities allow him to reach the 8th rank very soon. Then the old man asked if there were any other peculiarities after using it. Then Li Yun remembered that one of them had said, "If it wasn't for the pill, I wouldn't have been able to get rid of the evil spirit sitting inside me." This means an unprecedented breakthrough. The mentor was shocked by this information and loudly asked him a lick. After all, this pill must be at least rank 5. It costs about 5,000 gold. Luo Yun lit up at the idea when he heard the sum of 5,000 gold. The old man was not happy about his idea. 19 years of his life had already been nurtured by him, but 19 years was just a blink of an eye to the Celestials. Luo Yun didn't believe in these Celestials. He even encouraged the old man that with such mental vigor, it was not a problem for a mentor to live for 200 years. The old man only looked at him and promised to teach him everything he had been able to learn himself over the years. Li Yun was surprised and decided to ask why he suddenly thought so. The old man did not begin to explain to him, but simply asked the question whether a man could live forever. Li Yun remembered hearing from people in the city that the most famous long-lived person was about 200 years old. Immortality was just a fiction. The old man mumbled a bit and said that immortality could be achieved through cultivation. In general, the old man couldn't give a straight answer to this question. Luo Yun's eyes widened, and he thought that he was sick. The mentor was tired of listening to all these statements and simply asked him if he wished to receive this knowledge. Li Yun kneeled down in front of him and said of course he does. In a formidable and calm voice, he ordered him to kill him and take his pill. That way he would get all his accumulated knowledge. Li Yun couldn't believe these words and thought that the old man was playing a joke on him, even though he had never heard a stupid joke from him. If he uses his pill, he will become number 1 in this world. But Li Yun didn't want to do that, because he didn't even look like someone who wanted to become number 1. He isn't and never was interested in this nonsense. If he hadn't forced him to cultivate since childhood, he would have been a simple man. And he only came down from the mountain and pretended to be a master at the behest of his mentor. He always only wanted to be together with him. Although Tianyang Cave is not the same as before, it is still his home. People say that a dog doesn't care about wealth. Its home is where its master is. No one wanted him when he was a kid, so he raised him, and now he's telling him to kill him and become some kind of #1 in the world. Li Yun is really starting to think that the older generation is the most susceptible to dementia. The old man only laughed out loud in response, as he had really just decided to play a joke on him. If it really worked like that, the world would just fall into chaos. And if he had read the books, he would have realized it right away. Li Yun was furious that this old stump was just bullying him. Mentor smiled and motioned for him to come closer, so he could do everything by beauty. When Li Yun came and sat down beside him, he asked him if he was afraid that he would actually decide to kill him. The old man was certainly not afraid, for then he would have beaten him to death himself. But before the procedure, he asked a question. The old man said he would give him all his knowledge. He had been saving it for more than 100 years. Would his body be able to withstand it? The mentor answered briefly and clearly that if he was lucky, everything would go smoothly. If he was unlucky, he would die. He quickly bounced off the old man, as he hadn't signed up for such a roulette. No knowledge is worth a life. But the man only said it was too late. Li Yun didn't understand what it meant by late. The old man explained that he had already touched his head several times, and he still hadn't felt anything yet. That's the lesson he taught his student. He does not feel anything unusual, so he will live. Suddenly, lightning started to appear from him, and blood started to come out of his mouth, after which he fell to the floor. Turns out 108 lightning strikes was a gift from his mentor, but he had a lot of faith in him. Li Yun found himself somewhere in space. He immediately thought it was his subconscious. He was also furious, because that damned old man was really just messing with him. He promised himself to pull out all his hair and beard as soon as he came back. Li Yun also heard the strange name of Quishan from the blue flame. It was his soul speaking. He decided to walk up to the blue fire, but fell down into the hole. Although he was worried a lot, but then he pulled himself together and started repeating to himself, "It's all subconscious. You didn't really fall. Don't be afraid." Suddenly, he was grabbed by some female silhouette. He also began to resent that he was going to betray them. A second male silhouette appeared and ordered Feng to kill him, this traitor. After which, Li Yun's hand was released, and he continued to fall somewhere. He found himself where in the woods on the floor. When he got up, he still didn't realize where he was at all. Just as suddenly, lightning from the sky struck right beside him. Li Yun was very much startled and bounced away. After that, the lightning bolts began to strike larger and many times more powerful. Li Yun put on running away from those lightning bolts, so he gathered the lightning in his hands and directed it into the sky. He thought he was done, but a bolt of lightning appeared right in front of his face. This all lasted until the next morning. When the elder woke up, he thought that everything had already been decided and had to end. But as soon as he saw Li Yun's body lying there, he was very surprised. He didn't understand how it could have happened. In the process of transferring knowledge from mentor to apprentice at most, the second is separated by a small scratch. But to turn into a coal, it is not mental. Suddenly, after a couple minutes, Li Yun stood up and started asking for food. The elder exhaled with a calm conscience, for he thought he had already been zapped to death by the lightning bolts. Li Yun walked up to him and grabbed him by his clothes and started demanding an explanation of what he had done to him. The old man said that now, his awakening meant that he had safely mastered the skill of thunder and lightning. Li Yun started yelling at him even more that he hadn't learned a damn thing. The elder began to calm him down and told him that while he was in the stream, he was constantly affected by thunder and lightning. So now his body was familiar with all the techniques. The so-called flow is a kind of channel for opening the body and consciousness. Everything that a person experiences in the flow is imprinted in his consciousness and also affects his body. Li Yun was furious that he just sent his disciple there, knowing what awaited him there, and didn't even say a word. "This is truly the height of nobility," said he sarcastically. The old man began to calm him down and told him that he had also gone through this in his time. He also started to convince him that he couldn't die. He'd be crippled at most. If you want to blame someone, you can blame yourself. The elder also asked how he was feeling. Aside from the searing pain all over his body, he felt great. It was very cruel, so Li Yun asked what it was called. The old man asked him to describe in more detail, or there were too many such tricks. The one began to explain incomprehensibly, and also started swearing. The elder roughly understood what had happened to him, and realized that the lad still got off easy. In summary, after everything the elder said, Li Yun somehow doesn't feel anything. and he didn't even gain any knowledge. The elder told him that all the techniques were stored in his subconscious, so when the time came, his body would know what to do. He had also prepared medicinal herbs for him, so he asked him to undress. Li Yun didn't know whether to believe him or not because it sounded strange, but he still decided to trust him this time. Looking around a bit, he saw a magical barrier he had never noticed before. He wanted to walk up to that barrier, but an old man called him over and asked him what he was doing there with his bare ass for so long. Li Yun also asked if there was ever a magic field here, because he hadn't seen or even felt it before. So he decided to go and check if it was a trick of someone who wanted to disturb him. The elder explained to him that this field was here to isolate him. Li Yun wondered why he should be isolated at all. The elder suggested that we discuss the matter again after he had taken a healing bath. If the animals and birds saw him naked, they would laugh, and he obviously did not want to be a laughingstock. Sometime later, he sat in this healing bath, and now he really has no pain. He even apologized for not believing in his healing prescription. He was taught the recipes for these medicinal herbs by an elder, but he apparently hasn't memorized anything, which is why he's so surprised by it all. Li Yun calmed him down and said that he had memorized everything, just like the thunder skill that was passed down to him. It was just stored in his subconscious, and he wasn't ready to use that knowledge yet. The elder was not pleased that this asshole dared to mock his mentor yet. Afterward, he got up completely out of the tub and said he felt just fine. Next, he got out of the tub, and when he got dressed, he still asked again why this field was isolating him. It's a long story, and it's not the right time to tell it. Li Yun began to guess that he must have some big secret, and he looked like he could specifically get caught up in telling him the whole truth. He couldn't believe that there was a magic field that could trap the old man. It makes him want to try to destroy it. The elder added that sooner or later it would have to be destroyed, but the time had not yet come. He also advised him to come down from the mountain, for if he stayed here long enough, it would lead to unnecessary misunderstandings. Li Yun didn't understand why he wanted to chase away someone who was sneaking him clothes and food and taking good care of him. The old man also told him that this magic field was only preventing him from climbing the sacred mountain and leaving Tiangang Cave, but even if there was no one to take care of him, he would still be able to hunt and not starve to death. So he listened to his questions and just pushed him so he wouldn't have to tell him the big secrets. Li Yun realized that he didn't want to see him, so he decided not to interfere with his senile view of the world and just walked away. When he left, the old man took out the pill and hid it in a more secure place. When he arrived at the clan, he was immediately greeted by Quaner and asked him where he had been for 2 days. Li Yun decided not to tell him the truth, and simply said that he had found a quiet place where he could practice in peace. He also came closer to him and whispered that in the past few days, the sect had such a peculiar atmosphere. Quaner didn't quite understand what he was getting at, because it was all thanks to the sect head. Li Yun laughed and promised to improve the recipe next time. He also asked why he was walking around the Kolo gate and looked nervous. Quaner took him slightly aside and pointed his finger at the child. The boy said that he was looking for his father, after which Quaner questioned Li Yun to guess who he was looking for. Then Li Yun started to guess. There aren't many people in their Yunxian sect who can match this child's age as fathers. It's hard to tell who he looks like. Beautiful facial features, noble aura. Quaner laughed a little and replied that he was looking for exactly that. Li Yun himself couldn't believe it. He asked Quaner to cut the bullshit and look at that boogeyman in him. He's still a small child himself. If people knew about it, they would think he was a pervert. Quaner said to deal with him, but he never got through to him. He kept saying he was his father, so convincingly that he started to believe it. While they were talking, this kid saw him and started running into his arms. The child began to say that he was his long-lost son. From this tight embrace, Quaner asked if he was sure it wasn't a mistake of youth. Li Yun shouted at him to shut up and not talk such bullshit, because he couldn't even conceive a child at that age. Quaner asked him to calm down, because he didn't know. But anyway, it was so touching that father and son had found each other. And he also reminded him that the opening ceremony was tomorrow, so he had to prepare for it. So he decided to go give some advice to the students who would be participating in the competition. Li Yun asked him not to go and help him figure it out, but the latter only refused and said he was busy. Li Yun bent down and decided to sort it all out. He asked if he had made a mistake and found the wrong man. He was only 19 and he couldn't be his father a priori. The kid looked at him and asked why he didn't recognize him. He decided to strike a pose, and that's when it came to Li Yun's attention that it was his cute kitty. Li Yun didn't understand how the latter could be Brother Chen, Chung decided to give him a visual demonstration of how it happens. Through cultivation, he had attained human form. Li Yun rejoiced and exhaled that he didn't try to find a cat for Brother Cheng, otherwise they would have thought he was a pervert. There was just the question of why he had told Quaner that he was his father. He did it just to have fun because he looked funny when he said he was my father. Li Yun asked him not to joke around like that anymore, because everyone here is conservative and he wouldn't be able to clear his reputation. Li Yun took him by the snout and asked him when he regained consciousness. He replied simply that the night he left, he suddenly learned to speak and think. Li Yunwei picked him up and went with him to Daqiang. He wanted to see if he could change too, but he still couldn't believe that he had once taken him in, and now he had taken human form and consciousness, and all this had happened in only 5 years. Chung added that he was able to take human form so quickly because of the murderous energy emanating from him and the old man. After that, Li Yun had even more questions, for it was unlikely that their energy could leak out. Chung said that when he was in the mountains, he thought that everyone had dense murderous energy in them, and only after coming down from the mountain did he realize that those people's energy was much weaker than his. Even the old man had mentioned something about a murderous state of mind. He thinks that both the old man and he had such states. Li Yun was shocked because he knew that only 1 in 1,000 cultivators could master murderous souls. How was it even possible that he had this condition? So he asked him to stop talking nonsense, or else he would be caught and experimented on. Chung calmed him down by saying that these people won't do anything. In fact, that's why he doesn't do anything. But that wasn't a fact. It might even be that he was mistaken, and he just had a slightly higher cultivation level than others. Either way, it was better not to mention it. Otherwise, it might affect his future cultivation. The next day was the Lingxiao Association, Taiyi Palace, namely the day of the opening ceremony. Li Yibai approached her brother and asked how he was doing. He just slapped his hand on the table with great anger. She asked him to take his anger out on someone else, and also advised not to appear at the opening ceremony in such a state. Liu Rushi said that she was pissed off at Tian Yu, only she can piss him off like that. Except Li Yibai heard that she was avoiding him. Liu Rongxi was furious because she had already made up her own mind, so it was no longer his problem. Li Yibai explained that girls hate it when men chase other women. How could she not be mad at him if she caught him in bed with another woman? Liu Rushi is even more furious, as he didn't think the others thought so badly of him. He doesn't even know who the girl is, and has no idea how she ended up in his bed, and besides, he was very drunk that night, so he doesn't remember anything that happened. Li Yibai decided to feel sorry for his brother, and decided to end the conversation on that note. Suddenly, Liu Rongxi noticed Tian Yu among the guests. Li Yibai decided not to waste the opportunity and spoke to her. She immediately asked if she was really not going to reconcile with his brother. She asked a very simple question: if she could forgive him if she were in her place. Tian Yu decided to convey to her that there was some misunderstanding, so she should listen to her brother's explanation. Tian Yu didn't even want to listen to him. She didn't see the point in discussing anything when the marriage was already dissolved. She just hoped that Liu Li sect wouldn't clash with Lingxiao sect. After all, she didn't want to be enemies with her. As soon as Tian Yu saw Liu Raoshi, she said goodbye and immediately quickly left that place. Li Yibai advised to catch up with her and convince her to talk now, because she would agree to listen to him. Liu Rushi thanked her for exactly she wants to help, but because of her stubborn nature, he has already apologized as it is. He doesn't want to beg her on his knees. Li Yibai didn't understand him, but told him to do as she knew how. She decided not to take care of him anymore in his old age if she wanted to remain a bachelor. Meanwhile, Qi Qi and Li Yun were gathering berries and medicinal herbs. When Li Yun offered to eat a candy, she refused because she was participating in a competition. Li Yun forcibly stuffed this candy into her mouth, although he produced them in the furnace to make cultivation pills. To Li Yun's surprise, Qi Qi really liked this candy, so he asked if they would be in demand in the market, and also asked if it was worth opening a Yunxian sect business. She of course started to encourage him, and said that it was a very good idea to release such pills in the market. Li Yuan took her cheeks and thanked her, because he likes it when she flatters him. But she began to make excuses and tell the truth, that she really wasn't flattering him. Suddenly, Li Yibai broke into their conversation and yelled for that pervert to take his hands off her. He remembered that it was the same girl, and wanted to talk to her, but then quickly shut up so as not to reveal his identity. Li Yibai grabbed Qi Qi and took her a safe distance away from that pervert's hands. She even drew her sword and prepared to attack. But Li Yun quickly started to justify himself, and said that she had misunderstood, and that he hadn't really hurt her. At that, in his head, he didn't understand why this girl wasn't acting the same as last time. She's so rude compared to that night. Li Yibai didn't even want to listen to him, for she had seen everything with her own eyes, and everything was clear. If he was a decent man, then how could he put a girl in the middle of the day? Chiki interjected and said that she was just joking around. Only now did Li Yibai realize that they knew each other. Last time they called him a bum, now they're calling him a pervert. But even if it's just a joke, men and women can't act like that. Chiki took matters into her own hands, and since the opening ceremony would be starting soon, she suggested we hurry up. And as soon as they stepped back, she whispered in his ear that they shouldn't make enemies before the competition, or they would become a target and be in big trouble. Li Yun laughed and praised her that her head was thinking well. Li Yibai was approached by Liu Rushi and asked why she was still standing here and not at the ceremony. Li Yibai turned around to him and said, "All men are the same." Liu Rongxi didn't understand what she was even getting at or what she was talking about. Already at the ceremony, Li Yun met Xiao Qi and the latter asked why he was taking so long. Then he started telling a long story that he met a girl at the door who claimed that he was harassing Chiki. She must be blind. Why would anyone ever harass Chiki? She has absolutely nothing. Tsitsi took offense and blamed it on her youth and assured me that these things would grow up sooner or later. Li Yun apologized to her and said that he just accidentally misspoke. Kwana reminded Li Yun that he had sets and asked him not to hammer on about his image. Li Yu quickly gathered his uniform and asked which of their disciples were participating here this time. Then Kwana called Xiaoning, Shifeng, Xiao over to introduce. Wu Xiaoning, student of Wu Quan, technique, camouflage. Wu Shifeng, disciple of Wu Quan, technique, charm. Wu Xiao, disciple of Wu Lao Qi, technique, creating combustible gas. Li Yu was a little surprised and asked if the number of participants from each sect had already been approved. In order to ensure sound concreteness, yes, the number of participants cannot be increased or decreased, except under certain circumstances. He remembered that the old man had advised him to sneak in the contestants since the talent there wasn't great. Except now he didn't understand how to get there. The venue for the preliminaries is a normal arena. There's no way he can get in unless he completely changes his appearance. The disciples of their sect are currently at the Heavenly Wrath stage. Also, most of them are still in the beginning stage. It is easy to guess that they will take the last place. He's also so very tired from the journey from his master's house that he's ready to sleep right there. So he pulled 2-piece cardboard eyeballs out of his pocket and attached them to his eyes. Thus he slept, and no one would even notice. Xiaoqi advised his brother to relax. The head looked like a yen pit, so he asked to let him rest for a while. Suddenly a girl ran into their tent and started screaming for help. Chiki walked over to her and began to help her stand up, and began to reassure her that her mentor and sect leader was here, and no one would harm her. Xiaoqi also said that the organizer of this event is Bai Na from the Xuanqi sect, so no one would dare to be rude to him. This girl started to tell that she was threatened and was promised that she would take off all her clothes, hang her up, and beat her. She also abuses her power. From such a story, Xiaoqi even threw his corn out of his hands. Quan'er asked to still tell everyone who wanted to harm her to help her. Suddenly, Lu Linglong, a disciple of the Luxian sect, also ran into the tent, and also Lu Jihao. She started walking towards Lu Qingqing, and also apologized to everyone for her behavior since she understands absolutely nothing about jokes. Lu Qingqing slapped her hand as she didn't want to be touched by those monsters at all. Therefore, Lu Qingqing ran to the head. But Chiwanger was worried since the chapter was still sleeping. Lu Qingqing started telling everyone that there was no need to cause a commotion. Lu Linglong had just threatened that she would strip him if he lost the first round in the competition, and also ordered him to swear in front of the Yongxian sect head that he didn't say that. Lu Linglong started yelling at Lu Qingqing to quickly come over to her and not embarrass her in front of everyone. Quan'er stepped into the conversation, and he realized that it was an internal conflict between the three of them, so he advised everyone to go back and sort it out amongst themselves. Lu Linglong walked over to her and grabbed her arm, and ordered her to follow her so that she wouldn't embarrass herself in front of everyone. Lu Qingqing broke out of her arms and ran away, after which Lu Linglong apologized and promised that upon her return, she would definitely give her sister a lesson in good manners. And that was the end of it. Quan'er even exhaled that it was finally over with. After which, Quan'er walked over to Li Yun and started to wake him up. But nothing took him, and Quan'er didn't know what to do, after all. The Liuxian sect had a grudge against them. They clearly didn't come with good intentions. Xiaoqi didn't understand what he wanted. Well, as the saying goes, there is a remedy for every eventuality. They would take appropriate measures. They had been dealing with this kind of thing for a long time after all. And also, Xiaoqi noticed that there was a drunkard among those three. When he came, he let out an ominous aura towards the head. Apparently they wanted to find out something. Quaner warned everyone that if they encountered Sextiluxion, he asked them not to lose. However, they should exercise caution. Meanwhile, all three of these three strange people had gathered in one tent. When Lu Linglong asked what she had uncovered, Lu Qingqing simply and succinctly said that he was too inscrutable. From the moment she entered the tent to the moment she ran out, he didn't say a word. Just stared at them with his eyes that looked like copper bells, and he also didn't even blink. She also suspects that he realized from the beginning that they were just making a scene, so he just sat back. Lu Jihao also agreed with her, for as soon as he entered the tent, he purposely released an ominous aura against him, but his aura did not change in any way at all. He is truly unfathomable. This kind of qi can be achieved when one is in a deep sleep, and this shows how strong his cultivation is. He takes care of his health all the time. Lu Qingqing was furious. When even she grabbed his hand, he didn't look at her, but looked at Lu Jihao as if he was dead. Yu Qing's last disciple is definitely not an ordinary person. Such a person cannot be underestimated. Most likely the Yunxiang sect will be the dark horse this year. Lu Linglong decided to send a message to the old man, and be sure to keep an eye on him. Half an hour later, the competition officially began, after which, Bai Na from the Xuanzi sect came out and greeted everyone. She is honored to be the host for this competition. 8 sects will participate in today's competition. Last year, 5 sects participated in the competition. This year, 3 new sects were added. The Wanding sect, the Nisheg sect, and the Qianzhen sect. The crowd was unhappy that a sect like Nishan had the right to participate in the competition. After all, they were heretics. Quaner was more residing since the atmosphere is more severe this year. Xiaoqiang calmed him down, saying that if they lose, it means they lack experience. Since Quaner was always worried, he decided to ask the chapter to produce the White Phoenix pill for him. After that, Baina decided to explain the rules to everyone. The competition will be divided into a first round and a final round. 24 people will be divided into 8 groups. They will fight in pairs against each other according to the draw. Only one person from their group will be pulling lots, so no need to worry, they won't be fighting each other. If the entire team is eliminated in the first round, they lose their qualification. The 12 people who won the first round participate in the second round. The second round of the competition will begin at the gathering place and end at Lake Kuai. The one who arrives at the finish line first will win. And there are also restrictions in the competition that you can't kill anyone. Lu Linglong came to the conclusion that one could maim and injure as much as one wanted. The main thing was that no one should die just during the competition. The venue for the first round is right here, and with so many people watching, even if they didn't want to, they won't be able to kill anyone here. Liu Rushi remembered the rules are such just like the teacher said. There are no discrepancies. The only thing that is a danger is the Nisheng sect. Also this time, the Xuanzi sect and His Majesty had decided in their deliberations that the Tianzi sect would automatically advance to the next round. Everyone was shocked by such a statement. Li Yibai, who had never heard of such a rule violation, was especially furious. The Nisheng sect had always lacked a sense of tact, and this time, they would do their best to win. Meanwhile, Ning Fei was displeased that Lan Nian was trying to seduce someone with that look. Lan Nian explained that the beauty from the Ling Shui sect kept looking at her, so she greeted her in her own style. But apparently she doesn't know how to respond tactfully. She moved closer to Fei, and told him that she knew he had always lusted for her body. And needless to say, she wasn't seductive just because she was unattainable to him. After which, Fei started to hug her legs and smell her beautiful fragrance. Wang Juyuan was not pleased that Lan Nian dared to take his lust on his own sectmates. He asked him to stop doing so, as it would be bad for the sect's reputation. Lan Nian told him to relax, because their Nisheng sect had never had a good reputation. Wang Juyuan began to explain to her that before, they really had a bad reputation, but now it was necessary to restore it. Lan Nian of course understood all of this, but she also remembered that the sect leader had sent them here to kill. Wang Juyuan started to get indignant. After all, the sect leader didn't say that they needed to kill people. He said to only do it when necessary, and asked her not to distort the meaning of the words anymore. While they were talking, the whole time Feng was hugging her legs, and so it got to her and she threw her off. But he was still keeping up. So she wanted to finish that bookworm, and then he could say whatever he wanted. Wang Juyuan became indignant and said that they shouldn't kill each other. They are like bangles of the same family, they should be kind to each other. But Fei didn't want to listen and just attacked Wang Zhuyuan since his sexual well-being depended on it. Wang Zhuyuan ordered him not to dare use his technique here. It might also affect other sects. However, if there are a couple deaths in some sect, it's not so bad. Fei didn't have time to use his magic before someone hit him with magic in the stomach, from as he flew off and blood came out of his mouth. It was Bai Na who was keeping order. Today's competition was about to start, so she forbade disturbing others. When Feng came to his senses, he wanted to kill Lan Nan. Bai Na warned all three that if they didn't want to die, she advised everyone to quietly watch the competition. Fei did not stop and wanted to kill her as well, but Wang Zhuyuan stopped him because he realized that he was not her level. Li Yibai watched this situation and realized that the disciples of the Nisheng sect are unreasonable people who are even willing to fight each other. She can't even imagine what would happen in the competition if they encountered such people. Their teacher said that the Imperial Palace had always considered the Nishai sect as heretics, but this time they decided to recognize it as a sect, so it was very strange. Judging from the actions they just took, this dwarf is the weakest of the three of them. Showing their strength to their opponents right now is very foolish. Li Yibai speculated that they might have made these introductions specifically for them. In any case, no matter what their opponent did or said, it should not be taken lightly. After an hour, the draw has come to an end. The first round has officially begun. 3 groups will face each other today. Shuang Tianyu of the Liuli sect versus Shang Zhen of the Wuchang sect. Zhang Yang of the Jianzhen sect versus Wu Xiaoning of the Yongxiang sect. Lu Qingqing of the Luxian sect versus Sun Shenzhen of the Wanding sect. The first to enter the ring was Tianyu and Shang Zhen. Shongshen immediately decided to make a distance with her. After all, she is a closer warrior. Suddenly a snake appeared out of her shadow. Tianyu immediately quickly stuck her sword into the Yutu creature, thereby killing it. Tianyu saw that his Wuchang sect hadn't made much progress for this goal. This kind of technique wouldn't work against her. Tianyu decided not to waste the precious hour and jumped at him with her sword. Since it was forbidden to kill people, Shang Zhen decided to retreat, no matter how far. Everyone knows that the spiritual strength of Shuang Tianyu's eldest daughter from Liuli Set is unwavering. He is not foolish enough to fight her directly in what she specializes in. But a fool is he who agonizes forward and does not look under his feet at all. After which, spirit snakes began to appear under Tianyu's feet. This time, for some reason, she couldn't chop them up. Shang Zhen then explained that she certainly wouldn't be able to shred. He had long ago learned how to control and modify unreal spiritual nature. Whereupon he ordered his serpents to tie her up. Liu Rushi was furious and was ready to kill him right there. Also, the entire crowd turned their attention to Zhang Yang. He stood still, his face as red as a macaque's ass. Zhang Yang asked Wu Xiaoning to dress normally first, because even he was not comfortable fighting against her. Ta just ignored her and asked her to enter the ring. Lan Nian noticed that Zhang Yang had seen an illusion, so he didn't dare to look at her. When men are horny, they all act the same. She knew it well. Stepping into the ring, Wu Xiaoning asked why he wasn't even looking at her. Zhang Yang only asked that she not even approach him. In his mind, she looked almost naked, so it was uncomfortable for him. Quan blamed himself. He didn't give her a proper upbringing. That's why she grew up so unscrupulous. Xiaoqi didn't realize what Jie Yan saw after all and asked Quan. Quan shouted at him to back off and not to touch him. Zhang Yang walked over to her and gave her his cloak. He also admitted his defeat, only for her to put her clothes back on. Such a decision even made Wu Xiaoning blush a little, after which they dispersed to their camps. The third battle was won by Lu Qingqing. Quan was shocked that it was Lu Qingqing who won this round. He already thought that it was only a matter of time before this little girl from the glazed tile sect defeated the fickleness sect. Xiaoqi only laughed, because their Yuxian sect's first match was considered a great fortune. Xiaoqi also graced how peacefully their head Li Yun was sleeping. He still hasn't woken up. That's some special skill already. Meanwhile, the glazed tile sect and the impermanent sect were battling. Tianyu threw her sword at him with great speed. Shongshen didn't even know what to do and just stood there in a stupor. After which, Bai Na announced that today's winners were Lu Qingqing from the Luxianmen sect, Wu Xiaoning from the Yongxian sect, and Shuang Tianyu from the Liuli sect. Lan Yan was glad this was all over, as she was very tired and decided to go to sleep. Except Wang Zhuyuan quizzed her not to forget about the mission tonight. When she came out of the tent, she didn't see the head of the Yongxian sect for some reason. She really wondered who Yu Qing's real disciple was. She also expects it should be very tasty. Meanwhile, Quan approached the ancestors and asked what the orders would be. A sleepy Li Yun began to mumble that he would tell the story of the 800-day battle between him and Xiao Hongbi in the Lichen courtyard. Quaner didn't understand who Xiaohong was, or what he had done to him at all. Quaner came closer and started to wake him up. He only said to get away from him as he wanted to finish his sleep. He didn't understand how that chapter was going to get home, so he ordered 2 men to carry him out of here. No matter how hard they tried to lift it, it was like it was glued to the chair and impossible to lift. Quaner was very angry, said his ascendancy already even with that chair. Li Yibai didn't understand how the Yunxian sect didn't feel ashamed of such a lazy leader. Yu King also has a weird and strange disciple. Liu Rongxi didn't even listen to her. His head was busy with his own thoughts. So he ordered his sister to go rest, and he had something he had to do in the meantime. Then the younger brother said that Liu Rushi had probably run to beat someone up. It was probably that little bastard Shangzhen from the Fickle sect. He still couldn't stand the way he treated Tian Yu's sister in battle. Li Yibai thought of nothing else but to send her younger brother after him. Meanwhile, Wu Xiaoning looked around and took a closer look at the other tents. Quaner noticed this and asked what she was doing there. Wu Xiaoning came up with the idea of just looking after the bathroom. Quaner ordered her to go back immediately without even looking into it. Xiao Qi came up to him and laughed and advised him to start practicing, even though he knows the man would say that he is only strong when he is in a good mood. Quaner didn't realize what kind of nonsense he was saying, since if anyone dares to defile their sect, he would have to deal with him. Meanwhile, a girl stood behind him and watched, using a nasty spell in a bottle in case. When night fell around, Wu Yun had just started to wake up. Just as he had fallen asleep during the day, he slept through the night. When he got up, he didn't understand why it was so dark outside. Chen then explained that he had slept all day and was just now waking up. Also, the old man told you to come to Tianyan Cave when he wakes up. Except it was strange because the master had said it. But he couldn't have come down from the mountain. How would he know it then? He also didn't tell him that the kitty could now turn into a human. Chung simply pointed at the feathers. But Li Yun didn't understand anything. Then Chung explained that the old man had sent a pigeon with a letter. But since the Khan was hungry, it ate the whole thing. Li Yun wasn't very happy that an innocent bird was eaten. So he told him to turn into a human next time and eat human food. Anything will be more edible than a bird. Nevertheless, he remembered the fact that only in fairy tales and legends do animals turn into humans. Chung did not understand how he knew all this, for he had never read a book. Luo Yun said to ignore it, and not to pay attention to the fact that he was lazy. He actually has an excellent memory. Still, such a thing is only possible in legends. He has not met any such examples. And if anyone finds out, by all means ban him and try to learn his secret. And we may even have to sterilize him. Chung asked him to take him to the mountain with him. He decided to ask the old man himself what was happening to him. Perhaps he is a celestial child, or perhaps a great demon. Therefore, without wasting any time, he packed up and traveled to the old man's house together with Chung. As a friend, they noticed 3 people wearing black cloaks. And also Liun asked them to be careful, as the old man had asked them not to reveal their identity. Meanwhile, Liu Rushi was standing in the forest and waiting for the man. Suddenly, he heard a rustle from behind the bushes, so he went there to find out. There he saw a girl from the Yunxian sect. He didn't understand what she wanted to do with her rival facing her. Wu Xiaoning asked him why he accepted defeat so easily. Zhang Yang replied simply that he just doesn't hit women. And he also asked Plus not to do this again in the future. She had come here to give back his cloak, which he had so kindly given away. Zhang Yang was fine with even having that cloak as a gift. Meanwhile, Liu Rushi was sitting in the cutaways watching all this in the bushes. He didn't understand what kind of nonsense they were talking about, and from the outside, it looked like awkward lovers. All the men of the Thousand Needle Gate sect are lonely. No wonder people don't count because of men. Suddenly, Shang Zhen approached Liu Rushi and asked him to get right down to business, or whatever it was he needed to do, since he still had to go to bed. Liu Rushi told him to shut up and get down. Zhang Yang and Wu Xiaoning noticed the conversation in the bushes, so Zhang Yang just offered to run away. Then Shang Zhen guessed that he had come to take revenge because he had offended his sister in the competition. With a rough voice, Liu Rushi confirmed his intentions. Shang Zhen laughed as he did not expect this from him. He had merely tied and played with her, which was a normal occurrence for a game. Besides, Miss Tianyu broke off her engagement to him, and for what purpose he didn't understand. Meanwhile, Chung and Li Yun were also sitting in the bushes as they saw 3 poachers from the Nisheng sect here. They decided to watch since they looked very suspicious. But on the other hand, as long as they don't interfere with them, so you can give a damn about them. As suddenly another man in black was behind them. It was Li Yibai, who also didn't understand what the 3 from the Nisheng clan were doing here. She even began to assume that they had come to look for Master Yu King. Then Li Yun decided to greet her. He also explained to Chung that he had saved Liu Yibai from the Lingxiao sect. But she didn't know that he was the disguised head of Yunxian. Chung remarked that he was very interested in this girl, although she was pretty, but he also asked him not to forget about their business. Li Yu promised to just slightly chat with her for a few minutes. He came closer to her and asked her what she was even doing here alone, for she was afraid of the beasts in the forest. She decided not to answer, but to ask the same question of him. Li Yuyi made up a story that he was just living in this forest. She was of course surprised, but then she added that this was why all spirits feared and loved him at the same time. She also noticed the kitty, and then he introduced to her that his name was Chung. The kitty seemed very cute, so she asked to pet him. Chung began to mentally threaten him that if he dared to let this woman touch him, he would let him die a painful death. But Li Yun of course allowed her to pet her. When she touched him, the kitty even liked being stroked by such a gentle hand. Li Yibai really liked this kitty. Li Yun also added that he likes her too. Usually he doesn't give it to her so easily. But he all decided to cut to the chase and asked what she was doing here. She told me that she was going to Tiangang Cave. In other words, she was also going to Tiangang Cave last time. She also asked him to take off his mask so she could see his face, because this was the second time they had met, and she still hadn't seen his face. He's already set himself up that nothing will happen if he tells her he's Li Yun. But the master doesn't seem to want others to know he's looking for him, so he left it for next time. Li Yibai saw that he didn't want to reveal his identity. She was just in a bad mood today and wanted someone to talk to. First, she is worried about her brother, who is competing. Secondly, today, the new sect leader Yunxian was flirting with his disciples. Not only that, but he's also swearing at them. She started calling Yu King stupid and old-fashioned for having such a dude as the head. Then she realized she was wasting her time telling him. It was her problem. Plus, it was late, so she decided to leave. Li Yun only saw 3 other people enter the forest, and they didn't look like good people. And he's afraid that those people might hurt her. She didn't understand why he cared for her so much. They weren't even friends. He argued that he was just a good man. He also decided to give her a jade pendant that is filled with energy. It is an amulet that will scare away beasts and forest spirits. She asked how she could even meet him if she needed to find him. Li Yuan came up with the idea of waiting for her on the shore of the Green Lake on the 10th of every month. If she wants to find him, he will be there. This month, it turns out they could meet in 3 days. Li Yibai even got a little excited and said goodbye to him. Chung was glad that his personal life was finally getting better somehow. Meanwhile, near the Tianyang Cave, those 3 sect members appeared. They were looking for Baji's Golden Castle, which was supposed to be hidden right here. The Baji Golden Castle formation was a formation used on battlefields, created based on azimuth, astrology, terrain, and other factors. According to legend, this formation once encased thousands of soldiers and horses, but 8 spellcasters must sacrifice their lives to activate it. Lan Nan ordered him to shut up because she was even disgusted to look at him and asked him to behave normally. Fei was angry and would have been ready to turn her into a pool of blood if not for the sect leader's orders, as suddenly a voice was heard from the cave. "Children, for what purpose have you come to Tianyang Cave?" Then the old man himself came out of the cave and noticed that more and more people were coming to him lately. But he would not have thought that such young people would come to him. Fei laughed when he saw the old man, because before he had envisioned him as God coming down from the earth. But now he was just an old man with a head and 2 legs, living out his last years. After that, Fei ordered him in a good-natured manner to give them the stone. The old man pulled some pebble out of his clothes and asked if it was him. The elder was surprised that they had come here just for this stone. When Fei picked up the pebble, he was a little angry, as it was an ordinary stone that even a 3-year-old child would recognize. Then the old man suggested that they go in and search the cave and take whatever they wanted if they didn't believe him. Wang Juyuan decided to take matters into his own hands, and introduced that the 3 of them were disciples of the Nishingmen sect, and they had not come here to annoy him. The old man was surprised, and asked if they were really from the Nishingmen sect, or if he had just heard it. Wang Juyuan then began to tell him that the Nishingmen sect had existed for 10 years, but few people had heard of it. The elder got angry and asked why then he would not kneel down when he saw the teacher. Everyone immediately bounced back to a safe distance. Li Yibai, who was hiding in the bushes and couldn't believe that she had met the master on the street, began to watch the situation. Then the 2 of Nishinmen apologized and asked what exactly he had. Then the elder told the story that 19 lei ago, the head of their Nishingmen sect, Wu Yuan, who was also the old man's disciple, had tried to attack him, so he was kicked out of Yunxian. Fei didn't understand why they had to kneel then. Even though Fei respects Starkey and considers him a true master, they just want the stones. They don't want to make his life difficult at all. The old man didn't continue to listen to them and just drifted off to sleep back at his place. This really pissed Fei off, and he decided to turn him into a pool of blood. As soon as Fei directed magic at him, the old man repelled everything with ease. He looked at them with an angry look and asked if an old man didn't deserve a little peace in his old age. Lan Nan even realized that it was indeed when all three of them came here. But in any case, she decided not to interfere in their affairs. At this time, Wang Juyuan noticed a poisonous gas that was so stinky that his eyes started to water. Fei also didn't understand how this was possible. He had used the gas together with the evil spirit. He had killed thousands of people with it, but he hadn't even managed to damage Yu Qing. The old man only laughed at them, for they were only children. They are young and ignorant, so today he decided to let them go. He also asked them not to disturb his sleep unnecessarily. This also made Wang Juyuan angry, so he took out some kind of scroll and opened it, making a bunch of vines appear. He also decided before all this to apologize to him for what he would do. Lan Nan suddenly shouted that she wasn't with them, and didn't know them at all. Both of them were shocked by this betrayal. Meanwhile, Li Yun, along with Cat Cheng, stood on the mountain and watched as a huge bolt of lightning struck right next to the old man's cave. Kosha couldn't imagine why he was suddenly so angry. Based on the color and intensity of the thunder, Li Yun understood two things. One, the teacher woke up at the wrong hour. The second, he was probably tired of talking too much. So he decided not to visit the teacher today and to go back. Kotick grabbed his pants with his claw and asked why he was not going to calm down this old man who was so angry. Li Yun started to run away as he feels the pain from that lightning strike, and he's extreme not pleased. In a couple minutes, the elder had dealt with the two like two fingers to the pavement. They were both lying there, unconscious. Meanwhile, Lan Nan sat under a tree and was already afraid of this old man. When the old man asked why she was still not leaving, Lan Nan was very much frightened and couldn't believe that he was letting her go after all. She even felt like he hadn't even used 10% of his strength. The old man hadn't forgotten how the one had said that she wasn't an associate of those two people. And if that was the case, he would certainly not disturb her. Especially he was tired and needed rest. At his age, every hour of sleep is very important. Meanwhile, Li Yibai was still sitting behind the bushes watching everything. She only realized that this sage had already become an immortal. When she started to leave, the old man asked her to stop. He asked them to remove that coal and clean up the entrance to the cave and wished them good night. Lan Nan answered the group, saying that the coal had already been scorched and decided to leave it here as fertilizer. The two only said in a very faint voice that they were still alive. She wouldn't even listen to them and just walked out of there and asked them to leave for good. For the old man it was not outrageous, and for him it was unseemly behavior. That's why he doesn't like people. Suddenly, Li Yibai came out from behind the bushes. She introduced herself as Li Yibai from the Linwei clan. She had come to see a great sage named Yu Qin. The old man asked what business she was looking for Yu Qin for. She didn't understand what the question was about, and just stood there in a stupor. The old man decided to help and told her that she was trying to conjure up this name that had been recalled 19 years ago, or his, which his teacher had occasionally mentioned. He also reminded her that he was no longer young. The earth was waiting for him. And yet he did not know whether she had come for him or for the stone. She must have an answer in her heart. She continued to stand silently, so he asked her to say hello to the teacher and went into the cave. Li Yibai asked him to stop, and she explained that she had indeed come here because of the stone, but had no intention of taking it away. She just wanted to know why everyone was fighting so hard for him. Young people are too hot-tempered and capable of forgetting respect for home and master, starting a fight on someone else's doorstep with no regard for the convenience of others. Incredible but true. Why fight over a stone? Since it is just a stone that is broken or stolen, it cannot give any good. It clearly carries evil in it. A stone does not bring any benefit, even a small one. It carries evil and injustice. Whereupon the old man went to continue sleeping. She suddenly remembered a story that her teacher and Yu Qin were best friends, but for some reason they stopped talking. It's been 19 years since then, and they say it's because of this stone. When Li Yibai started to clean up, she didn't know how to deal with the students facing such a conflict after all. Meanwhile, on the way home, Lan Nan was very angry with her two former allies. Suddenly, while she was jumping fast through the trees, someone threw a pebble at her, which made her fall straight to the ground. Lan Nan immediately started shouting and asking who attacked her, and ordered her to come out if that person wasn't a coward. After that, Li Yun came out of the bushes and asked where she was going and where she came from. He also asked why the other two travelers who were with her earlier were not seen.